Roll On is back in style resplendent. Adam, here's where I ask you that question.
What's that?
Should we do the show?
Today, I think we should.
I think we should too. Let's do it.
Born in 1966. He turned his life around. He wasn't doing so hot. He got rid of that weight, and he gained a lot of wisdom. He lives in a tent. Thank you all so much for playing along, and I hope you have a wonderful night. And I'd like to welcome to the stage, Mr. Rich!
Hey everybody, welcome to Roll On, where my journalist appendage, Mr. Adam Skolnick, and I rip matters of interest from the headlines and our lived experience. We riff on sports, culture, entertainment, self-betterment. We answer a few listener questions and so much more. Today we've got a fun, I should say light in comparison to at least the Roll On from 2 weeks ago. Show today, we're going to announce the winners of the 2021 Rollies. Ooh, very exciting. We're going to talk a little bit of endurance news, answer one single listener question. And once again, we're going to close with a coaching call check-in with friend of the pod, my coach, Chris Hauth, the man guiding me towards this perhaps ill-fated 12.5-mile open water swim race that is looming on my calendar. But first, how goes it, comrade?
Rich, Larry Ellison owes me $25.
That sounds like a story.
It's not that great of a story, but I went, with a family and we went to the tennis tournament, Larry's tennis tournament in Indian Wells.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 2 days planned. One day we took my parents, we got like 2 stadium seats and we had 2 grounds passes and we brought Zuma because April was a very high-ranked junior tennis player in Australia. So tennis is a big deal in our house. And so anyway, we parked the car. We parked the car in this huge grassy lot. Looks like size of Coachella Festival. And as we're walking, we're pushing the stroller. It's a vaccinated only entrance thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Zuma is under 5, can't be vaxxed. But usually they're allowed in anyway. But in this case, we had all the people who were working in the parking lot saying, they're not going to let them in. They're not going to let them in. So we were prepared. I go up to the counter or whatever, the ticket place to get my refund because I said, well, okay, I'll just get my money back. Couldn't go because they wouldn't let Zuma in. And nowhere on the website does it say, you have under 5 aren't allowed. And so but she wouldn't give me my parking refund because she couldn't because it's been scanned.
Yeah.
So there was no way for her to do it. And so I'm like, okay. And so she said, you can just call, email this guy and he'll
Larry Ellison
and
directly.
It turned out to be Larry. And I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how are we going to get justice for you for this?
Larry's very busy. I don't want to be an apologist for Larry. He is very busy. He does owe me $25 and I am going to tack some interest on there.
Well, maybe when you're out swimming, you'll see him fly by on one of his sailboats.
Yeah. Well, to make matters worse, I shorted Twitter.
Yeah, not smart.
Yeah, because
but who knows?
Elon comes in. He's a regular at the B&J. And
Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. He comes in. He gets
a joke that won't die.
He gets a triple scoop. I'm just saying. And he told me he was going to buy Twitter. He was going to bull rush Twitter. And I thought he was kidding because he's that kind of guy. We have
that's your rapport.
Like you and I,
right.
We have a thing. And I thought he was fucking with me, so I shorted Twitter.
It's going to be interesting to see what pans out with that.
I know.
It's all upside down.
Poison pill and everything.
That's a different podcast, though. We're not gonna pick that one apart today.
We're not getting into Elon's head today.
I will say that I stood behind Larry Ellison in line at a CVS once.
How did that go?
I don't know. I mean, it was just he was buying Band-Aids or something. I can't even remember. This was years ago.
Celebrities.
What's interesting is that, he owns like an insane amount of Malibu beachfront property, including I think where like Nobu and the Soho House is. And
doesn't he own the Malibu Beach Inn and the Ryoko?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lanai. He owns the island.
I know
Lanai.
he owns like that whole island, right?
Yeah.
Founder of Oracle, for people that don't know.
Which is
and
cloud,
he made
stuff,
he did make an appearance in Founder Television. Did you watch The Dropout?
I watched the first, because when we were talking, I watched the first episode of The Dropout.
Yeah. So he is portrayed in that miniseries, including a scene with Elizabeth Holmes, played by Amanda Seyfried, on one of his yachts in the San Francisco Bay.
He does seem to live well.
Yeah. Anyway, that is all aside of what we're actually going to talk about today.
Yes.
But first, I should probably check in with what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on with you? I know you were in Miami.
I'm always waiting. I always ask you what's going on with you. You never ask me what's going on with me.
It's true.
I feel
I miss
unfulfilled
I miss
in
my
this relationship.
Every week I miss my cue.
If we're gonna have a healthy relationship, it has to be two ways.
That's what I told Elon yesterday.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm good. I was in Miami like 2 weeks ago and had this incredible experience. I hosted my first conference. It was for this organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. I've done a lot of events for this organization over the years. And
what does that mean?
It's basically like this global organization of young CEOs, and each kind of local chapter functions almost like a mastermind group, where it's pretty cool though. Like they really help each other out, and they have all these like family, community oriented events and all this infrastructure, but it's essentially like young CEOs. I think there's a cap on the age limit.
Okay.
And it's, kind of like a way for them to, have a means to, share what's going on with them and have other people help out, et cetera.
Info share.
And they do like a lot of speaking stuff. So like when I went to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Morocco, like all of those were YPO events.
Okay.
Which is cool. But
do they cap on the boomers when they're in private?
Yeah, I don't know. But this was my first stab at actually hosting like an all-day event.
Interesting.
Where I had to be on stage I don't know, 14 times over the course of the day. And it was a wellness-oriented thing where a lot of friends of the podcast were actually the speakers, like Matthew Walker and Walter Longo. Laird and Gabby were there, Dan Buettner, Mark Hyman was there, Ken Cook from the Environmental Working Group, Chip Conley, who's this hotelier who was instrumental in helping build Airbnb, who now has this thing called the Modern Elder Academy. He was super cool.
Cool.
Ken and Chip, I'm definitely getting on the podcast. We're trying to schedule all that right now. But my point being, like, I thought it would be like, oh, it'll be cool. Like you just get up and you introduce each guest. Like how hard can it be?
Right.
And then when I got into like the responsibility of what that entailed, because you're basically like charged with holding the energy of the crowd and keeping this thing moving, and having, making sure that everyone's really engaged and interested in what's happening. And ended up like rehearsing for like 8 hours the day before and wrote like a 35-page script. And then during the day was like revising the script and trying to find jokes. And, it was a cool challenge and definitely like a puzzle that I've never tried to assemble before, but it was pretty thrilling.
It went well.
Yeah, I dug it. It was super fun.
And everyone was into it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it went really well. And I found like a groove with it. I found it to be more fulfilling than just being one of the keynote people.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, it's up to you. Like, can you get these people excited? Can you make sure that they're holding their attention? Can you keep them entertained? Can you keep this thing moving on time? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, it was pretty cool. So anyway, that was really gratifying.
Cool.
I really want to do more of that. Like that kind of busted my cherry with that type of work. And I have such a whole new level of respect for people that host, because I think it's easy to look at, I don't know, people that host like reality TV shows and the like, and just be like, they just read, they're reading off the teleprompter. How hard can it be?
Like the Bachelor guy.
Yeah. Like, well, I called my friend Osher Gunsberg, who hosts The Bachelor in Australia. And I was like, because I was having a panic moment. I was like dude, I got to do this thing tomorrow. And
Yeah.
I just realized like it's so much more intense than I thought it would be.
Right.
And I only have so much time to get ready. Like you gotta talk me through this. And he spent a couple hours with me on the phone, and it was incredibly helpful. He gave me all of these tips and tools because he's been doing it for like 25 years.
I like
was
the
really
Amazing
helpful.
Race guy, Jeff Probst.
Yeah. Right.
I could see you as a
I
Jeff
mean,
Probst.
It's a cool thing. Like I was very dismissive of the whole thing until I did it, and I was like, wow, this is like a lot. You know?
Right. Yeah. No.
Props to anybody who hosts stuff.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. And I had gone to Miami a couple days earlier so I could get some swimming in prep for this race. Got a bunch of cool open water swims under my belt, including one the final day. I shared this on social media and I talked to you about it.
Right.
I was probably a little bit too offshore. Like Miami Beach, it stays pretty shallow
Right.
until you get pretty far out. And
Right.
it was a little bit choppier than I would have liked. So I wanted to get past the break. But it was still I was probably like 200 meters offshore.
Okay.
It was still only like maybe 8 feet deep.
Right.
So it's not like, oh man, I'm out at open sea or anything like that. It's all very manageable. Swimming along, and then 4 5-foot lemon sharks swam just beneath me,
So
like
cool.
right along the bottom,
Yeah.
which was super cool. But also, it's like, dude, they're sharks. They're right
Yeah.
there. you
Sharks
know?
look like sharks.
And I know that lemon sharks are not the most aggressive. And I found myself much calmer in the situation that I would have predicted. I was like, okay, I should probably get a little bit closer to shore, and just kind of calmly pivoted towards shore. And it's not like any of them even noticed me or anything
Right.
like that.
Well, they probably noticed you, but they didn't care.
But they don't give a shit.
Right.
Right. That's
And they would go
basically-
close to shore too. I mean, that's
Mhm.
that 200. It's not like they're staying at 200.
Right. Do you know much about lemon sharks?
No. Would you like me to Google?
Well, live now.
Live Google?
Yeah. I mean, my understand. I mean, they're not innocuous. Like they have attacked people. I don't think
I
they've
think
never
probably
killed. I don't know if they've
mistaken.
ever killed
No,
anybody.
No. It's
but-
it's so rare for people to
Right.
get even bit. It's crazy rare.
Mhm.
It's insane.
But they weren't small. I mean, they were like the length of
no,
this
they can
table.
get 11 feet. They can get. Those are probably juveniles. They can. I'm just
And they
looking at-
look like, like what a shark. It's not like they look different than what you would expect. a
Sharks
threatening
always
shark to
look so
like.
sharky, don't they?
They can be
Unless
counted
they're
on
like
for that.
the funky
That's the-
kind of like port.
We've just found the
Townsend,
title
whatever.
of this podcast. Sharks can look so sharky.
I mean, leopard sharks.
That's the quote graphic
it.
that we're going to use.
Like nurse sharks have the little like catfish thingos that makes
Right.
you realize that whale sharks still look sharky, but they don't
Yeah.
bite you. But everything from reef shark up looks so sharky.
Mm.
Let's see what it says. What does it eat? It eats
Human
known
fingers.
ultra athletes that wrote
Exactly.
books,
That's a very small
loves
group
podcasters.
of people.
Mm. Yeah, they eat crustaceans. They're not eating
No,
humans.
I know. So that was a cool experience. I've never been out in the water and seen a
That's very
shark
cool.
in the wild.
Never?
No.
What about in
I don't
Hawaii?
think
You
so.
never seen it? You never seen reef sharks in Hawaii?
Dolphins, but never. No.
Really?
Maybe tiny little sharks that I don't even remember, but nothing
Okay.
that was like, wow, that's a legit
A legit shark.
group of sharks
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
You know.
It's fun.
In any event, the conference that I was at was just prior to the Bitcoin conference,
Okay.
which is what brings that was like a big deal. So I left like the day before that started, but I have a bunch of friends that are Bitcoiners who came into town early, so I was able to see one or two of them. And
Did you guys hit the clubs?
it made me but I have this friend Peter McCormick
yeah.
who has the biggest Bitcoin podcast. It's called What Bitcoin Did.
Mm-hmm.
And he came on one of our retreats to Italy several years ago. And he had this idea of starting a Bitcoin podcast, and I kind of helped him get it up on its feet. And now he's like the man in Bitcoin. Like he ended up like hosting essentially like a full day of the conference. Like he's a big name in that world. And it made me think like, oh, maybe Peter would be a good guest. Like I've never had anyone on to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I have a lot to
We've
learn
attempted
there.
to talk about NFT.
I'm the furthest thing from an expert on crypto,
No.
but it ain't going away. And that Bitcoin conference was a big deal.
You know what my favorite thing about crypto is? The Larry David commercial.
That you don't have any of it? No.
The Larry David.
I
I do have some.
Oh, is that the Super Bowl commercial one?
yeah.
I can't remember whether I saw that or not.
Oh yeah, it's great. We'll link it in the show notes. There's a long form on YouTube. I do own some Bitcoin. Not Bitcoin. Some lesser known cryptos.
Some weird crypto coin. All right. Why is that?
No, I own some lesser known cryptos
I own a
that
tiny bit
haven't
of
quite taken
Bitcoin.
off yet.
I own like a negligible amount of Bitcoin.
Like a quarter of a coin.
Less than that. A quarter of a coin would be, I mean, Bitcoin's at 40 grand right now.
Okay.
So
I think
a quarter of a coin would be
10 full grand.
Yeah, it would be 10 grand.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Larry Ellison, if you're listening, you can put that 25 straight into a Bitcoin percentage.
Into your wallet, your Bitcoin wallet, your crypto wallet.
In my crypto wallet.
Exactly.
Not yours, Larry.
But here's the thing. I returned from Florida with COVID. Which is interesting because I thought COVID didn't exist in Florida. But maybe that's why I didn't start to experience symptoms until I was on the plane home.
I like that joke. But Rich, I think it's good. You left Miami with a communicative disease like you should have.
Right. Yes. I mean, I interacted with hundreds of people.
Yeah.
It was spring break. The Bitcoiners were coming into
you
town.
also went to spring break?
Well, like you're in these hotels at Miami Beach, and it's just like oomfa, 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 like at the pools all day long and all night. You can't escape it.
And the music, you know what? I like dance music. I like house
This
music.
is where I'm an old man.
Yeah, but listen,
I'm like,
I like dance music.
Like this music?
I like the disco house, the old stuff. This crap, this like Miami version, it's remarkably
Well, what's
bad.
interesting is that in Miami, everywhere you go, that's the soundtrack. I went to the Timeout food court. Timeout builds these food courts all over the world with and they're pretty cool spaces. And they'd built one on Lincoln Road in Miami, and I'd never seen it or been to it. I was like, oh, I'm going to go check it out. And I walked in, and it was like oomfa, oomfa, like so loud in there that I did a loop and just walked out. I was like, I can't eat in here.
Oh, that was the dinner soundtrack.
No, it was in the middle of the day.
What? Let me hear. What was the soundtrack again?
It's just, like, come on. All right. Anyway.
Wait. What hotel did you stay in?
I was at the W.
Is the Standard still there? Because they closed here. But the Standard there.
The Standard was there, but the Delano, which was kind of like the OG hotspot, is closed down right now. Okay. And that used to be the furthest north that anybody would go in South Beach before it kind of got gnarly. Mm-hmm. Now it goes quite a bit further north, but there's still, it's an interesting spot. Like
I like Miami. I think Miami has some charm. Some people don't like it because it looks like shallow on the surface. I like that it's like this great Pan-American city, probably the only Pan-American city where people from all over Latin America live. It's a true bilingual city. Mm-hmm. It's got great Cuban and just Latino food in general, Mexican, Cuban, whatever. Everything's there.
Yeah, and if you're there and you want to eat plant-based, you got to go to Love Life in Wynwood. So our friends Diego and Veronica own this restaurant. They're geniuses. It is the best plant-based restaurant I've ever been.
Really?
And that's like, I say that like I've been to a lot of places.
You're going to get a lot of phone calls and texts.
I know. I love it. They're so good. Diego's recipes are incredible.
Does he have a cookbook?
I love it. I shared it. No, they don't have a cookbook. I think one of the recipes is going to be in Dan Buettner's next book, which is coming out soon.
Oh, cool.
And they're making some cool moves that aren't public yet, but I'll be sharing about soon.
I love them. Living out there.
So yeah, that's my recommendation. Love Life in Wynwood.
Good stuff.
But anyway, yeah, I came back with COVID. That's why there was no roll-on last week.
Right.
Which is, we would have typically done it then.
How was it for you?
It was pretty mild. I was vaccinated. So within a couple days, I was kind of over it. I didn't lose my taste. I didn't lose my smell. I had 2 nights where I experienced some form of fever and chills. So for 48 hours, just at night, I got like, shivery or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then basically just kind of achy and weak for a couple days. And then it passed. So
did you isolate somewhere in the house?
I isolated in my tent.
You stayed in the tent?
So I was like the English patient.
You were.
It was like, Tyler was joking.
The smallpox guy.
It's like 1910
yes.
and you're recovering from consumption.
Yes.
In isolation in a tent in the backyard. The only problem is it was like 95 degrees out. So the tent got way too hot in the middle of the day for me to convalesce.
Right.
But yeah, I isolated. And everybody else in the family is fine.
Cool.
I basically just hydrated, slept, rested. I did do a 5-day course of Paxlovid, which is an antiviral that was recommended to me. And I think that probably expedited how
Oh,
quickly
cool.
I got over it. In addition to that, I took a lot of supplements. I took about 40,000 IUDs of vitamin D every day, vitamin C, vitamin K, quercetin, curcumin, on top of what I typically take, which is just a multivitamin, athletic greens, B12, and stuff like that. So
your pee was like rainbow colored.
it was very yellow. It was very yellow. But 3.5 days in, I was pretty much fine. I had talked to a bunch of athletes who were cautioning me not to get back into any kind of training and to really take my time with it because it can snap back on you.
Right.
I've had friends that have taken 3 weeks off, but I felt like 5 days in, I felt completely fine. So I went back to the pool on day 6, I think, for a light swim, and have just been slowly building since then. But I feel 100% now.
Nice.
But I did miss, I think, 7 days of training. So in the context of training for this long open water swim that is not too far away in the future, that definitely set me back.
Seems like you're rocking it though from Instagram stories.
Okay. It's been nice to just be in the pool and focus on swimming every day, because during all of the ultra endurance races that I trained for, I would only swim 2 or 3 days a week because the focus was on other stuff. So it's been decades since I just focused on swimming and kind of swam pretty much every day. And it feels good. I feel strong and getting stronger every day.
You look great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. What else we got? A quick little piece of housekeeping before we move into the next thing. Matthew Walker, who was in Miami, I talked to him about coming back on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And I think what we want to do is an AMA formatted conversation that's obviously specific to sleep. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we'll be doing that at some point in the spring or the summer. And I thought it would be good to just make the announcement now. If you have a sleep question, you can submit that on our voicemail at 424-235-4626, or you can send an email to rrpstudio@richroll.com. So sleep questions only to that email for Matthew Walker. We'll go through all the questions, of course, find the best ones, and kind of do a very structured, sleep-oriented conversation.
I'm really not that great at sleep. If Matthew cares to tinker with me or in any way.
I think Matthew cares deeply, Adam.
Yeah. He seems like a caring guy.
He is.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do our endurance sports check-in. We got a lot of news to share
let's do
today.
it.
Where do you want to start?
Robbie Balanger.
Of course.
John Henry, or as I call John Henry 2.0, or as I call him, Don Juan Henry.
Don Juan. Yeah, he is very charming with that mustache. Very swarthy.
Don Juan Henry.
The idea was that he was going to outlast a Tesla, outrun a Tesla. I think there's a lot of people who don't know.
Tesla. You pronounce it Tesla.
As opposed to what?
Tesla.
Tesla? Tesla.
Yeah.
Tesla.
Tesla.
Like a Z with a Z vibe on it? Tesla?
That's what you said.
I don't know. I'm not even consciously aware of how I'm pronouncing it. My point, though, is that you throw the name John Henry out like everybody knows who that is.
People don't know who John Henry is? Do they not
there
learn
might
that
be a
in
lot of
grade
people out
school
there
anymore?
who are less studied in American history. So spell it out.
John Henry, it was this period of time when basically people were building the roads and getting through mountains. So they were using, they would blow it up, and then people would kind of go in with a pickaxe and like hack their way through mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And then the steam engine was invented. And John Henry was the greatest of them all. He was the guy that he did the work of 20 men. There's like folk songs about him.
Yeah, he was like the David Goggins of road engineers.
he was the workhorse of beyond. Like he was like 50 men. He ate like 10 steaks for breakfast kind of thing. I forget what it was, but he was like revered. And this steam engine came along and promised to put them all out of work. And so John Henry was challenged to beat the steam engine. I think he did it for his fellow workers. Let's show this engine who's boss, and the coal-powered steam engine versus John Henry. And John Henry was in a race, but it was a timed race. And John Henry beats the steam engine and
basically
then dies on the spot.
like drilling through the side of a mountain.
Right.
type vibe.
And then he dies at the finish line. But he wins. There's a great book called John Henry Days by Colson Whitehead, who I've name dropped on this podcast a few times before. It's one of his first books. I think it's his second or third. Very, very, very funny, very poignant. It's excellent. And so John Henry Days. But and I actually recommended that to Robbie in case he was interested.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, not to spoil it, Robbie did not die at the end of his challenge.
And it wasn't timed.
It wasn't timed. And he did technically outlast the Tesla, although he didn't meet his kind of time goal. So basically, this Tesla starts out on the outskirts of Austin and drives until it has a full battery charge and drives until the battery dies. It goes 242 miles, and Robbie's challenge was to run that distance from where the Tesla started in under 72 hours. He succeeded in in running the full 242 miles. It took him a little bit longer, just under 77 hours. And I think, the heat and humidity of the Texas hill country,
crazy,
like an average of 93 degrees Fahrenheit, plus 13,000 feet of elevation gain. We think of Texas as flat, but they did it in the hill country, so lots of ups and downs. It laid the pain on him.
It's a lot of miles.
And I had serious FOMO watching this because I was invited to attend and support, and I really wanted to, but I had just gotten back from Miami and didn't feel like I could leave town again. Plus, I had COVID, so I couldn't have gone even if I had agreed to do it. So I just watched it on Instagram like everybody else. But what was cool is so many cool people and friends of the podcast were there to support Robbie. We had Hella was there, Hella Sidibe, of course. Dan Churchill, who hasn't been on the podcast, but is a good friend of mine. He is the owner and head chef at Charlie Street in New York City. Just an amazing dude. A guy that everybody should follow on Instagram. He shares recipes and training stuff. Super positive, fit dude, Australian, contributor to Chris Hemsworth's Center app.
Really?
I love this guy. And he's an incredible athlete as well. So I pulled up his, Blake, you can pull up his, there it is. There's his page. So Dan_Churchill.
He's very photogenic.
He's very handsome and charming.
Yeah.
And positive.
Must be nice.
Wonderful, wonderful guy. Robbie, of course, is Robbie Balanger on Instagram. There's his page if you're watching on YouTube. So he was sharing, of course, images and videos along the way. But here's the idea, basically. Outlast a Tesla.
And he did.
He did it. We had Hella there as well. Here's Hella with another guy who showed up to support Robbie, William Googe, who Robbie supported when William ran the circumference of I think he ran around the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Like a year ago, and Robbie went out to crew for him and support him. He's an incredible athlete, very unique human being. He ran like 48 marathons in 30 days.
Crazy.
And then in the week, like prior to Robbie's challenge, he did Marathon des Sables, and he shared all his Whoop scores. Like I think Whoop posted a bunch of stuff like on their website. Maybe I can find a link to that. And then like a day later, he went to Zurich and ran a marathon there. And then he flew to Austin, did the Robbie thing. And then he went like straight to Coachella. And now he's like a hype beast in Coachella. Like this guy, like he wears gold chains. He's very like, he's like a hype beast. And there's something like kind of cool.
I like that the baggy sweats are back. I noticed clothes.
He's
baggy.
A style master, this dude. Like, check him out. But like a beast of an athlete, and it was cool that Robbie supported him, and then he flew all the way, basically halfway around the world to support Robbie. Here's William at MDS.
Oh, nice.
Looking like a fashion model.
Stud.
Out on the sand. Anyway, really cool. Congrats to Robbie for his latest adventure. That was...
you mean Don Juan Henry.
Don Juan Henry. Supported by 10,000, of course, that works with Dan Churchill and I.
Yes.
Among another, a group of really cool athletes. So it was kind of a 10,000 sponsored challenge.
It was.
Yeah. And it was cool to see what Robbie does next.
It didn't. It looked at one point. It looked like he was real shaky. Like he could move. If he was moving, he was fine. But like getting up from his support vehicle and getting back on his feet, man, there were times where he was like he was real wobbly. Yeah.
Yeah. super wobbly. And then he was running like no problem.
But then he was fine. Yeah.
And that's the way these ultras are.
That's right,
you look like, oh, this guy's done. You know, there's no way he can't even walk. And then a couple hours later, or night falls, gets a little bit cooler out, gets some calories and some food, a little bit of a nap, and then all of a sudden it's a new human.
Amazing.
So
Congrats,
good on you, Robbie.
Yeah.
Sorry I wasn't there to support you. We love you though, and it's cool to see you continue to inspire people all over the world.
100%.
But Robbie plays a big part in the next dispatch from the world of endurance that we're going to talk about today.
Yes. You mean Oz's Central
yes.
Park Loop record?
Yeah.
The Oz Pearlman record. Yeah. You know, if you have not seen, I mean, I feel like your listeners and our listeners, I feel like they're our listeners.
Own it, Adam.
Our listeners are aware of what happened. You were Instagramming about it, tweeting about it. Oz Pearlman, Oz the Mentalist, who was just recently a guest on this here program, wanted to set the record for the FKT for most loops around Central Park. He ended up doing 19 loops, 116 miles. In a day.
And it's important to note
it's
that
at 18 hours, 50 minutes.
Yeah, it's only that loop is only open during certain hours of it, like 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. or something like that, right?
That's right. 6 a.m. and you can't start till 6:05 and you have to finish at 12:55. So it gives you 18:50 when and he's breaking Robbie's record. Robbie did 16 loops. And Robbie held the second FKT. So it's not that like it's been around a long time. It started in 2020. Someone laid down, I believe it was 12 loops. It's in the article. Aaron Zollhofer, I believe is his name.
And by the article, you must be referring to the New York Times article that you wrote.
Yes. So I was lucky enough to be able to cover it. So I knew Oz was going to go for this. Oz, you know, the backstory of the whole article is that David Goggins invited me to a Zoom at the beginning of the pandemic when Oz was like having to transition his business from live shows to Zoom. And I'd heard of Oz before, but I hadn't really, you know, I wasn't really that acquainted with how great he was. And I sat in on this Zoom and I saw him predict like the serial numbers on some dollar bill in some dude's wallet, like 2,000 miles away from him through Zoom. And I realized, wow, this guy's amazing. And then quickly after that, I found out he was a great runner. And so I stayed in contact with him, just mostly Instagram messaging. And then I, you know, said, if there's ever an event he's going to tackle, let me know, because I think it would be a cool story. And he was going to do last summer Montauk to Manhattan, 170 miles. But it didn't end up happening. And so I'd already gotten New York Times Sports interested in that. And then he called me like 2 weeks before this. So 3 weeks ago now, 2 weeks before this, and said, what do you think of me doing this? And I said, I think that's great. And so I talked to my editor who's in charge of endurance and adventure sports at New York Times. Her name's Talia Minsberg. And we talked about Oz, and she quickly got on board. And so I did it. You know, at first I said, you're the New York Times at Central Park. Like, I can't get there, and you don't need me there. You have a whole office of reporters, really good ones. Why don't you just do it? I wasn't even going to do it, and or that's how I positioned it. But it turns out she wanted me to do it, so I ended up having to report it remotely. But Hillary Swift, who did amazing photographs, she was also kind of my eyes and ears. So we stayed in contact. I was obviously watching him on Instagram. I FaceTimed with him. I called him. I texted, I mean, everything. So I had full access, but it was interesting that it was a remote story.
And you talked to Robbie also.
I talked to Robbie beforehand. So I interviewed Oz and Robbie the week before. And so that was cool. It was my first chance to really talk to Robbie and understand what he's about. So he's mentioned in there. The best story that's not in there is there's a guy named George A. Hirsch. Have you heard of George A. Hirsch? He's the chairman of the New York Roadrunners. He's like 87 years old, I believe. And he also is a giant in publishing. He started New York Magazine. He went on to become the first global editor of Men's Health.
Wow.
So, and so head of Men's Health, started New York Magazine, also a giant in running. Not only is he now the acting chairman of New York Roadrunners, he is the founder of the 5-borough New York Marathon.
Wow.
So he changed that whole course and was an early runner. Like in the 60s, he's running around, nobody's running. Anyway, so he became friends with O's many years ago, and so he knew about, he's known him for a long time. And at one point, when his wife was in the hospital, she died of cancer, and when she was in the hospital after like a treatment went bad, O's was out on a long run and stopped by, and you could tell he was running. He stopped by to lift her spirits because they'd had dinner. They were close, and he comes in and says to his wife, he does a whole thing with his wife to lift her spirits. And at one point, he's like, "This is what George described." He says, "I want you to think of one person that is famous and one person who's not." And she said, "Okay." And then he goes over to her laptop and he pulls up a picture of Bill Clinton and turns it to her. And she's like, "Of course. Wow." It's crazy. and then I want to get this right. So I'm going to go to, then he scribbles down a note to, and hands it to her. And she opens up the note, and let me just make sure I get it. And she opens up the note, and it says, "Say hello to Shirley." And George's wife was named Shay. That's Shay's childhood best friend from Idaho, Shirley. And so like, that's the kind of stuff he's doing. And the fact that he took his time out and he did that, I think that's amazing. And I really wanted George to be part of the story, but there just wasn't enough words. And so they ended up using an example of what he did to me, which at mile 80,
right.
which was...
You're on the phone with him.
Yeah.
He's on mile 80.
Mile 80.
He's like running while talking to you on the phone.
FaceTime. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Adam, I want you to think of a friend." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "No, you're not thinking. If it's a friend, I could have researched. You're thinking less clearly than me, and I'm at mile 80. I want you to think of your first crush." And so I said, "Okay." Thought of my first crush. Then he asked me, how many letters were in her name, or think of how. Yeah, no, he said, think of her name. Okay, and then he didn't ask me how many letters. He said, "I want you to count the letters in her name." I said, "Okay, done." And he goes, "See, now I know it's a short name."
Short name.
Yeah, he got that right away. But that still doesn't. I mean, it was an odd name, and so then pretty quickly he gets it. It's Roz, R-O-Z. It's really remarkable how quickly he gets it. And this is someone I haven't talked to, haven't heard from, I haven't had any contact with in decades. So there's impossible for him to it's just incredible.
And he's run 80 miles at this point. I mean, he did that time and time again. We just put up a video of kind of behind the scenes of when he was here, where he's screwing around with the team here and doing all kinds of shenanigans. Amazing. And it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Blake, who the hell is Eamon?
So that was the version of what he did to Hirsch's wife, right? He basically pulls this name out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So quickly.
So he's a magical man.
It is wizardry.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And it was a lot of fun to write it, and it was cool. It was one of those stories I'll remember. So
if you're watching on YouTube, we're just kind of sharing the New York Times article. And in print, it was beautiful. I mean, they put all of these photographs in there, and it was a full page deal. So that's got to be cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah. And it was.
And how does it work with the New York Times?
To A1.
Oh, teased to A1, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you submit, you get like the green light to write this thing.
Right.
They assign a photographer, even though you're not there. You do your reporting, you write the thing, you turn it in, and then it goes through like a fact checking and an editorial process, right? And they strip a bunch of stuff out of it.
I mean, I think it depends on the desk. With sports stuff, I do my own fact checking. I want it real tight. So what happens is I report it, I'll file it, and then depending on the quick turnaround, this one we published Monday. So there wasn't like they had stuff already Saturday and Sunday covered, so they didn't need more stories. And so we were later than everybody else, which means you have to be better than everybody else. You have to be smarter, right? But we also had more space. So I file it, and then Talia does an edit, gets it back to me. I might make some changes. Then there's a second edit, like a copy edit, top edit. In that period of time, I'm doing all my fact checking. And then so anything I'm not 100% certain on, I will call whoever. So with O's, I had to call him like 3 times on Monday.
And then here's the other thing. So we didn't even say what he did. He did 19 loops, 116 miles.
Right.
Crushes the record.
Yep.
Goes home. It's, at that point, it's like 2 a.m. or something like that. Goes home, grabs a couple hours of sleep. and then has a 1 p.m. flight to Augusta because he's doing a show at the Masters the next day.
Totally fine. He's
and then
fine.
he shares this and he's like, I feel guilty for not running today, or I feel like I need to go running.
He only lost
because he's
one
on a
toenail.
streak, I think, too.
Yeah. He took a week off. He took a week off.
Okay.
Shout out Hillary Swift, the photographer. She was on a bicycle, like riding around with him all day. She must have done 50 miles on the bicycle. And she's a good marathoner. She's a sub 4 hour marathoner.
And friends with Alexi.
And friends with Alexi Pappas. And Talia, the editor on this, was also just ran Boston today. And she's a sub 4 hour marathoner.
So we're going to talk about Boston, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Prophets walk among us. As a writer and podcaster for nearly 10 years, I've become more convinced than ever that our world is populated by scores of beautiful and brilliant people who have amazing stories to share. Those that we don't know, who can teach us something new and leave us all the better for the experience of their sharing. And so I've dedicated my career to tracking down the most compelling prophets on the planet, going deep with each of them on my podcast, to elucidate the best of what they have to offer, and to sharing the insights gleaned for the benefit of all. But the podcast is not the only medium by which to share their stories, which is why I'm proud to announce the release of my new book, Voicing Change Volume 2. More than mere words on paper, Voicing Change is a physical manifestation of the magic, inspiration, and timeless wisdom that transpires each week on the Rich Roll podcast. The first edition of Voicing Change was a beautifully rendered book worthy of display on any coffee table. And Volume 2 follows in that tradition by showcasing even more of my favorite conversations in an elegant publication replete with interview excerpts, essays, and stunning photography, making for an exquisite companion to the first volume or a satisfying standalone work. Picking up this book allows you to revisit the wisdom of your favorite everyday prophets and physically interact with the life-changing ideas contained within. Voicing Change Volume 2, available now while supplies last for a limited time. Order your copy today only at richroll.com. All right, and we're back. We're going to talk about Boston for a couple minutes. Today is Monday, so Boston was just run and concluded right before we started recording. By the time anybody listens to this, it will be Thursday at a minimum, so there'll be lots of articles out and hot takes, etc. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this other than to just kind of note a couple interesting performances. First of all, friend of the pod, Scott Fauble, been on the show before for a previous amazing Boston experience. He came in as the fastest American in 7th, ran a PR of 2:08.52, 7th fastest American of all time. And what's interesting is that he's unsponsored right now.
Really?
So he literally wore a Lululemon tank top that he bought himself off the rack.
Incredible.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
He's going to be sponsored now.
And interestingly, he even split the race. He went from 22nd to 7th in the second half, ran 64.26 for the first half and 64.26 for the second half, which is unbelievable. Fastest American man since Meb in 2014. So a burrito for you, sir. That's his thing, burritos. We love you, Scott. Congratulations. There were a lot of eyes on this athlete, CJ Albertson. He ended up being the third American, ran at 2:10, his PR. And the reason there's a lot of eyes on him is that he kind of, he led Boston last year for the first, 21 miles or something like that. Yeah, I think 21 miles. He led the race. He's a rabbit. He loves to be super aggressive. And he's been sharing his workouts on Strava, and he's just an absolute maniac. So everyone's like, this guy's going to crush it based on what he was posting in this public forum. His final long run leading into Boston was a 22-mile run where he averaged 5-minute pace. So he's a beast. And he sprinted like right off the start of Boston and like led immediately and like really, aggressively kind of forced the lead pack into, a pace that was probably uncomfortable for most. So good for him. That's cool. On the women's side,
Evans Chebet won for the men.
Right.
Just looking
we should have noted who
Kenya
actually won the race.
Yeah.
correctly. Thank you.
And
congrats to him.
Yes.
On the women's side, Olympic and New York City Marathon champion Perez Jepchirchir, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from Kenya won. It was an epic final mile duel with the half marathon world record holder Ababel Yeshane.
Oh, really?
I'm pronouncing that as well, from Ethiopia. Perez ran 2:21:01, second fastest ever at Boston. Yeshane ran 2:21:05, so just 4 seconds separating them.
Wow.
Their final mile was a 5:23 mile. That's how fast these women were running.
That's amazing.
But just of kind of personal interest, 42-year-old Edna Kiplagat got fourth, running 2:21, destroying her own master's record. 42 years old, 2:21. That's unbelievable.
Insane.
Nell Rojas was the top American with a 2:25:57 performance. Among the other kind of American women who were getting a lot of attention, Stephanie Rothstein Bruce ran a 2:28. Des Linden, friend of the podcast, was the third American. She ran 2:28. Molly Seidel, there was a lot of eyes on her, and she ended up dropping out.
Did she not even toe up?
No, she towed up, and I can't remember at what point she dropped out. I mean, again, I just glanced at results in Twitter quickly before we started recording, so my take is half-baked at this point.
Okay, cool.
I do know that Knox Robinson, of course, was there running because he goes to every cool marathon. Alexi Pappas, interestingly, ran as a guide to a blind athlete, Lisa Thompson.
Amazing.
So that's pretty cool. And also, and this is kind of a story that's a bit aside that I've been tracking and paying attention to.
Yes.
Ultra runner and amputee Jackie Hunt Broersma, and I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correct, ran Boston. It was the 91st consecutive marathon that she's run. She's on pace to set a new world record, 92 days into her goal to run 102 marathons in as many days, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
So I think Boston was it day 90? Maybe it was day 92. I'm not sure.
Have you run Boston?
I have not.
How many marathons have you run?
None, really.
Oh, you haven't done an official marathon?
I did the Long Beach Marathon like early in my ultra career and was humbled by that. And that's the only legitimate like marathon that I've ever.
Do you ever want to run New York? I know you love New York.
Well, I got a charity slot for New York this year. I've got to heal my back though, because I'm not running at all right now. But I'd love to be able to go and participate in the New York City Marathon in the fall. We'll see. Let's talk about St. George.
Let's do it. What about it?
This is you. I threw the ball to you. You're fumbling a little bit. Come on. This is your jam, dude. You've been following the Norwegians.
I have.
I thought you were going to go to St. George and be boots on the ground to report.
I was supposed to go to St. George at one point, but it's just not going to happen for me, unfortunately. But I'm really excited to see what Christian Blumenfeld can do, and some of the other guys, Gustav Eden as well. The Norwegians are ready to drop the hammer, but it does seem like this race is lost a little shine for me. I was excited to see Lucy Charles Barclay, who won the half out there, the World Championship, and she was kind of like rounding into form and feeling really good about her form. I interviewed her for that same story I did on Christian and the Norwegians. And so she felt, she was like really confident then, and to have a fracture like that in the hip is unfortunate because it seems like that could take a little while. And then Jan Frodeno, who I also interviewed for that story, who I was very excited to see run, he also is
I heard that he's out, but why is he out? What happened to him?
I didn't follow up on that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. It's been very busy. I've been busy.
Adam,
I'm sorry.
You're working on a top secret project that we'll be able to talk about soon, but we can't talk about right now.
Yeah. But I was, he's 42 years old, so like but I think that having spoken to him, most likely he's gearing up his year. I think everything orients for him to the North Star of Kona.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that he wants to do Kona, and I know he reveres Kona. I know he wasn't really super stoked with the idea of racing outside of Kona.
Right. So just for people that don't know, this St. George Ironman is taking place on May 7th, and it's been set up
St. George, Utah,
as an Ironman World Championship.
Right.
Because of COVID and all these other reasons.
It's last year's World
Championship. Because they couldn't do it they canceled it in Kona because They didn't feel like if there had been an outbreak, they would not have been able to handle it on that island.
The island was like basically saying, we don't think you should do it. And then that kind of stopped.
So this is last year's World Championship, but Kona is scheduled to take place in October as usual.
Same, yeah. So it's still supposed to happen. They're not divorcing from Kona by any means, but they're interested in seeing, Ironman as a brand is interested in seeing what's going to transpire. Will this, like, maybe people won't miss it. Maybe they can travel every other year from Kona to cities around the world, because Europe is kind of where the sport's happening now. Anyway, it's so funny because when it really started, California, like San Diego, Santa Cruz, Mark Allen, Hawaii, like that was the epicenter of triathlon. Some Australians too, but mostly it was like
San Diego, North County, San Diego was really where the heartbeat of the whole thing.
And then Boulder came into it, but it was always really North American focused. And if you look at now the rankings and all the big athletes, it's European focused. Yeah. So to be able to take everyone, I think this St. George is setting them up to maybe see, hey, can we do it in Berlin? Can we make it a more interesting thing for the sport?
Right.
Which I like that idea, but then to come back every other year to Kona, that's how it was kind of told to me.
I like that idea. Yeah. I think it is important to shake this up a little bit and try to make it more interesting. There is something, epic about the legacy of Kona, and Kona is what it is. But frankly, it's not that interesting of a course. Like, you're on the Queen K going, it's like, I've spent a lot of time on the Big Island. I've done a lot of riding on the Queen K. After you've done it a couple times, you're like, is there anywhere else to ride? Like, I think that the sport would benefit from mixing it up, putting the World Championships every other year in a different setting with a different type of course that would favor or disadvantage a different type of athlete to really make it interesting.
Well, that's what's interesting about this course. It's going to be hillier. The cycling will be different. The swimming, you're swimming in a lake versus the warm sea. May is not always hot in St. George, so it'll be interesting to see. And I agree with you. Like, the cinematics of, imagine doing a race in, moving it around like Paris or Tokyo or wherever it is. I think that there is an appeal there. But we'll see how it goes. And but I am kind of bummed that these two big stars are out. You're always bummed when the two big stars are out. But I think really it was always going to come down, will the Norwegian experiment work? Will they have a world Ironman champion?
Yeah. Well, what's cool is that there has been some shit talking going on. If you want to be on top of that, the best follow on Twitter is Brad Culp, who's a journalist in the triathlon space. He's at BB Culp on Twitter. And he tweeted the other day, triathlon needs rivalries. And a few weeks ago, Joe Skipper, who's a British pro, he's the UK Ironman champion, started talking a little bit of smack about the Norwegians and saying, don't believe the Norwegian hype train.
Yes.
And when we talk about the Norwegians, what we're really talking about is Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Iden, who are just crushing it right now. And what's great is that there's this training video on YouTube. It's Gustav and Christian on a track with snow everywhere, throwing down like insane intervals
in Sierra Nevada, Spain.
At altitude, right? And they're just hauling ass. And at about 10:40 or something into this video, we'll share it for those on YouTube. Christian's got a little bit of a response. Here he is. He just dusted Gustav on this set, pulling away from him.
Whatever you do, don't believe on the Norwegian hype. Believe Joe Skipper.
A little reverse psychology from the Norwegian hype train.
He looks great,
The
doesn't
Norwegian hype train is looking good. If I was a betting man, I'm not betting against these guys.
I mean, me neither. I think he's already shown what he can do at the distance, Christian. And Gustav has too, quite frankly. He had a very fast race as well in Florida.
The sort of source of this is, sorry to interrupt you, the source of this is that, look, Christian's he did Cozumel, but he's not that experienced at Ironman.
Fair.
And,
and he didn't have a
he's
great
in over
half.
his head here.
He didn't have a great half in St. George.
Correct.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, we'll report back on that in the wake of May 7th. We got to talk about the Rollies.
The Rollie winners.
Do you remember a couple weeks ago when we announced the nominees for the first annual Rollies?
Do I remember?
Yes.
No.
You don't remember?
I blanked it out completely. You know how I feel like people have received the Rollies? They're like my parents, who, by the way, are devout listeners now of yours.
Yeah. How did they feel about the Rollies?
My dad wasn't really thrilled by them. My mother really liked them. And I think that's kind of like 50-50, right?
It was an interesting response. Like, I mean, a lot of people were like, come on, man. Really? You're going to waste my time with this? My time is limited. But we introduced them saying, like, we're going to now waste your time.
Yeah.
With a bunch of nonsense.
I mean,
so tune out or enjoy.
I mean, it's entertainment.
It's your choice.
It's entertainment.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Are we entertaining? I'm not sure.
We're somewhere.
Are we
like,
wasting your time? Probably.
We're infotainment.
Yeah, okay.
What do you think?
We're knee deep in this, so we have to see it through.
Are you committed now, though?
I'm committed.
So we're doing year 2.
I'm committed. So for year 2, we also have to come up with a trophy.
I agree.
Yeah. Or trophies.
I think year 2 we have special guests.
Yeah. I think that would be good. We could have a lot of hype leading up to who the nominees are going to be.
We nominate. Maybe we don't nominate on.
We could
on
just
the
dominate roll-on content.
We don't nominate on the air. We do a extended Rollies for the winners. We don't nominate on the air.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we got to report back on who the winners are. And what's great about this Google form, thank you to everybody who voted. They come back
Hundreds
at you
of responses.
with like, we got like pie charts. We got analytics on this whole thing. It's unbelievable. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. Let's rifle through it.
Let's do it.
First category, best endurance performance in an RRP supporting role. Who lobbied for this award the hardest? We all know who did. It was Jason Camiolo. He wanted it badly. He posted about it on social media. He courted voters. Who knows what else he was doing? Sending checks out, holding cocktail parties, pulling a full Miramax campaign.
It's a scandal.
He changed his avatar on Instagram to the Rollie symbol.
It worked.
This is how bad he wanted it.
It worked.
And you know what? He shall be duly rewarded because he walked away with 49.7% of the vote to be the 2021 victor in the category of best endurance performance in an RRP supporting role. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Jason. I wish we had a trophy for you. It was actually Jason's idea that we get a trophy. I think he wanted it for himself. We didn't get it together in time. Maybe we can do it posthumously.
I'd like to, just for the record, say I voted for everyone but me. Blake, I think I was one of your 2 votes.
Yeah, so Davey came in second with 22.6% of the vote. Then we've got Adam.
Yeah.
You got 22.3. Poor Blake. Courteous Blake, gentleman Blake.
Yeah.
We'll have to work on that for next year.
What do you get?
I think
5.4?
Blake's
votes.
impressive arc in becoming a competitive athlete is not being duly noticed.
I think there's
or
an argument
here.
that Blake is the best athlete.
I think that probably is true.
Yeah.
And the most diverse.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait for another year.
But that didn't matter.
But the pressure is on the staff to really up their game for the following year. I see this category just getting more and more competitive.
I see my resume not changing at all.
Okay, yeah. You could be the constant in this.
I'll do the same 3 things every year.
All right, next category, best endurance performance of the year by an RRP guest.
Yes.
The nominees were Hella Sidibe, Robbie Balanger, Courtney Dauwalter, Harvey Lewis, Leah Goldstein, the Iron Cowboy, Timothy Olson, Lewis Pugh, and Jason Caldwell. Walking away with victory with 42.9% of the vote is, drum roll, we need sound effects, Jason, the Iron Cowboy.
Yes.
Well-deserved. Yes. Congratulations, James.
Good
Moving
job,
on.
James.
We have a lot of categories to get through here.
Yes.
Coolest person of 2021. The nominees were Johnny Greenwood, Rafael Nadal, Bo Burnham, Nirmal Persia, and Billie Eilish. And victorious with 28.7% of the vote this year is one Billie Eilish.
It's not really fair that
headlining Coachella this past weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I mean, Billie and Rafa are like 2 legit stars. It's kind of not fair to the
I feel
others.
like Johnny Greenwood didn't get enough love.
I know that was your guy.
6.1%. He got so little that there wasn't enough room to actually write the percentage in his little slice.
Where did you have? When did you have time to vote for him 48 times, Rich?
Yeah, I know, right? I didn't vote. I stayed out of this. Here, you want to handle this next one?
Best limited series about narcissistic self-mythologizing, aka scammers.
Scammer series or
Scammer
Founder
series.
Television, I guess, right?
Yes, Founder
My
TV.
favorite category, but I'm handing it over to you.
Okay. Super Pumped. We Crashed. The Dropout. Inventing Anna. Bad Vegan. And the winner is Bad Vegan.
With 35.7% of the vote. Very interesting.
Low voter turnout on that one.
Not the best of that group, but I guess given the subject matter and interest of our particular audience, it's not surprising.
But Inventing Anna came in second, even though it's not that great of a show, but that shows you the popularity of the show.
That's so interesting.
And by the way,
the Dropout is the best, is the best of all of these.
But the hardest
in terms
to watch.
of quality.
Yes, hardest to watch.
Yeah, Inventing Anna is garbage. Didn't I say that last time?
You did, but
I guess the audience disagrees.
How many people disagreed with you?
I guess. But maybe the best at self-mythologizing? I don't know. Anyway, all right. Next category. We got to keep this moving. I'm a host these days, right?
Most
I am keeping this moving
film
forward.
of 2021. The Alpinist, 14 Peaks, Don't Look Up, Roadrunner, The Rescue, Dope Sick. And the winner is...
With 31.8% of the votes, 14 Peaks.
Nims with a win. Nims was nominated for 2
Rollies. This one was a little
Rollies.
closer with Don't Look Up and Dope Sick, pretty close on the heels.
Yeah, but I like that this is like one of those, he's walking up and you say, Nims was nominated for 2 Rollies this year and he came home with 1.
That's right. Best book by an RRP guest in 2021, another hotly contested competitive category. We got Bravey, Think Again, Why We Sleep, Dopamine Nation, Regeneration, Your Turn, The Awakened Brain, Stolen Focus, and Transcendence. And the winner is, Adam.
Bravey by Alexi Pappas.
Audience favorite. Of course. Everybody loves Alexi.
Good job. Where's
Nice-
how come
nice
everyone only claps
really-
for Jason? Come on.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's Alexi.
We need like that little button drop with a little applause, and also the music that like cues us off stage. The little symphonic, like little ditty. You need that too.
My favorite category is coming up. It had a lot of responses.
Yeah, this was I'll let you do this one because this was you came up with this category. We're going to have to revamp these, put a little more thought into the categories next year.
Max.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing. Okay.
Best Rich Roll Nuovo Obsession. Sprouting. Weightlifting. Decoding the Gurus. Ice baths. And Adam's swim mask.
Now this must be very gratifying for you.
This is a landslide.
By a landslide, the biggest obsession, the most rewarded obsession of the audience is Adam's swim mask.
Yes.
With an incredible 47.7% of the vote. People can't get enough of the swim mask. In fact, when I posted pictures of me swimming in Florida, people were outraged that I was not wearing the mask that you gifted me.
I know. Where was the mask?
But
where is that mask?
I ever expressed any interest in wearing a swim mask while I'm open water swimming? No, I have not.
It's your birthday
That gift, I appreciate it. It was symbolic.
Yeah.
I could put it in like a lucite case and keep it in my office,
should.
I probably will never swim with it.
When you set up the Rich Roll Museum,
Yeah,
then I think that's where it belongs.
And I think given the way that the audience voted on this, that will be the thing people will be most interested in seeing of anything that we've ever done in the history of
It'll
the
be
show.
great. It'll be like your mask and then my mask. My mask will be all corroded and used. And your mask will be pristine as if it's never been used.
Right. But among the many other artifacts, signed books by luminaries or whatever, knickknacks that we've collected over the years as a result of hosting this show.
Yeah.
The swim mask will be the thing.
The low-tech swim mask.
That will go on the epitaph, of the show.
My swim mask won a Rollie. I lost, but my swim mask won a Rollie.
Right. What do we make of that? Like that, we could dissect that into an interesting narrative.
Yes.
All right. Next category: luckiest rocker of all time. This is a garbage category. This was your idea. The nominees were Ringo Starr,
a repudiation of
George
my theory.
Harrison, and again Ringo Starr. So okay,
it's a repudiation.
when you
an outright repudiation.
What's interesting
of my theory.
is that the first mention of Ringo Starr got 41.4% of the vote.
Yeah.
The second mention of Ringo got 42.5%. So Ringo walking away with a whopping 84% of the vote, ostensibly.
And once again, my George Harrison theory does not hold water.
Jason's clapping back
thrilled.
there.
You should be rooting for the drummer, my
All right,
friend.
let's put this in the rearview mirror.
All right.
The dystopia you would most want to live in.
Yeah.
The nominees are Dune, Station 11, Don't Look Up, and Squid Game.
Interesting.
And the victory goes to Dune with
how do you feel about that?
45.5% of the vote. Would you rather live like with the giant worm trying to swallow you whole all the time?
See, here's what I think people don't get when they're voting for this. They all imagine themselves as the hero in Dune. But they're not most of us are not the hero. We're the people.
You're like the slave drone.
We're the slave drones. Yeah. So you got to think of yourself that way.
Driving the mining craft.
Yeah.
And being victimized by the Bene Gesserit.
Totally. You don't want to be victimized by the Bene Gesserit.
It's surprising that Station 11 only got 25.4% of the vote. I chalk that up to people just haven't watched it yet, because clearly that is the optimal dystopia that you want to live in.
No. Like Chicago, you don't want to live in that dystopia.
But if you survive it, then you're fine. And you can go like about your merry way as a Shakespearean actor.
Maybe. I didn't have quite a sunny reaction to Don't Look. But
there is something communitarian about it and celebratory about trying to, find meaning in your life in this post-virus world that they live in.
And they love Shakespeare.
They do.
Oh,
and they seem to actually be enjoying themselves. All right. As long as they're not getting killed. Best performance by an ice cream scooper in a leading role. This is another Skolnick category. What do I even say about this? Like,
Thank you.
Two nominees, the Cold Stone guy or Adam at Ben & Jerry's.
Thank you,
Adam
folks.
Being crowned with his first Rollie victory.
Adam
with
Skolnick's been nominated for
83.8% of the vote.
for 3 Rollies.
I mean, what are we even doing here? Why are we wasting people's time?
Thank you, folks. Thanks for
Best streaming series, the nominees, White Lotus, Station 11, The North Water, Severance, and Succession. White Lotus winning with 35.1%. Yes. Severance, which has taken my top spot, actually behind Station 11. I love Station 11, but
Station 11 over
Severance season finale was unbelievable. If you haven't watched that, I know you kind of lost interest.
I heard. I got to go back in.
It's an extraordinary achievement, that show. You got to check it out. Shout out to Ben Stiller. Unbelievable work from him and his team on that project. Best film content, period, series, film, whatever. Adam, you want to list
Bo
the nominees
Burnham
here?
For Inside. Denis Villeneuve. Villeneuve.
Dune.
The North Water, Severance, Station 11, and Rich's stealth TikTok account.
Why is that even a cat? That got 23.5%.
It came close.
More than my favorite show, The North Water, coming in with a dismal 6.7%.
But it wasn't your favorite show. Your favorite show you just said two shows you liked better.
You're right. I've got lots of favorites. The North Water, though, I mean, come on.
You know what? That
show is unbelievable.
Richard Skolnick is now he hated the Rollies, but he was very interested in your North Water.
So is he watching it?
He's going to watch it, yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Hopefully I've
the Rollies do help.
But Bo Burnham walks away with the Rollie with 30.4%.
He's a genius.
Well deserved. He is.
Let's give it up for him.
Honor Rollie Lifetime Achievement Award for Artist Working Film Professional. There's no vote here. Frank Grillo was the guy.
Honor Rollie.
Right? I mean, congrats
job,
to Frank. Last category, most overhyped film of 2021. There was only one category here, The Matrix Resurrections. So it walked home with 100% of the vote as well.
Well, it didn't make a lot of sense that the hero of the revolution would then opt back into the Matrix.
Right. Let's just create a better Matrix. That's how that thing panned out.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway.
All right.
We did it. So you can be mad if you're still with us, but we had to see it through.
And based on that, I'm not sure year 2 is going to happen, but it could.
Yeah, I know. Right. It could. We'll see. I'm sure we'll be on the receiving end of some responses, both tepid and enthusiastic.
Oh.
What do we want to talk about next? A couple things I want to mention. The first is...
See what happened there?
What?
I tried to then get into it. Go.
Yeah.
The timing.
I am throwing it to you. Sorry.
Yes, no. This is Bill Spindle's Substack.
I want to be a generous co-host, Adam.
No.
Sorry, I interrupted you. While I'm interrupting you again. People get really mad that I interrupt you too much.
I think I interrupt you.
I do, and I plead guilty to that.
Yeah. I do too.
But also, as a host, you're like, I got to move it forward. What are we
Right.
doing next?
The Energy Adventurer is what we're doing next. Bill Spindle's Substack. Your cousin?
My cousin.
Your cousin.
A couple years older than
Tell
me.
us about your cousin.
So Bill Spindle, he's been my cousin my whole life. He's a couple years older than me. He is an amazing journalist. He's been a journalist his whole adult life. He was editor of The Daily at the University of Michigan, and after that has just pursued this career. I think he got his graduate degree in journalism at Columbia. He worked for the Wall Street Journal for 20 years. He was the former South Asia bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal, covering India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Also the former Middle East bureau chief. He lived in Abu Dhabi for many years. He was in New York City, living downtown, working for the Journal when 9/11 happened, and has just been covering climate change, energy, that sort of portion of the world for a long time. He's currently a Council on Foreign Relations International Affairs Fellow living in India, and he started this Substack to kind of travel across India, cover climate change, and in a broader context, the transformation of the global energy system. And he's a wonderful writer, and he's sort of reporting boots on the ground, and it's pretty cool what he's done. So in this world of subscriptions and so many Substacks, I think he's signal amidst the noise, and everybody should check it out. So the link is billspindle.substack.com, and I'll link that up in the show notes.
Yeah, I read great stuff on the Indian railway system, which was really cool. It reads like a journalist that's been set free. You know, like
he doesn't have to, right?
Yeah,
he's not reporting to anyone.
No, but his reporting is still good. It's solid stuff, but yet it has a voice, and it has we try to have a voice, but usually it's kind of restrained in journalism. But his set free, and he has a point of view that's really interesting, and I mean, I think we always do, but like I said, it's usually restrained. This time it's kind of set free, and I love it. And I've always said many times, the best travelers are journalists with their boots on the ground in any country, and they can teach us so much. So I'm going to be staying tuned in to Bill.
That's cool. I could see you in another life with a Substack, hoofing around the planet.
Is this my 2 weeks notice?
This is your multiverse. Like if you were living in a parallel universe. No.
Oh, I can still.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, your job is secure here,
Okay.
Adam.
Okay.
What would we do without you?
It's funny. I did that. I did it for 9 months a year for Lonely Planet. But
it was a pre-Substack world.
It was pre-Substacky. I don't think at that time I would have made much of a living on Substack. I do have an idea for a Substack, but I got to get some stuff done this year, and then we'll turn to it.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the main things I wanted to talk about today is this recent article that Jonathan Haidt wrote for The Atlantic, which has been up now for, I don't know, at least a week, and is still the #1 most read story on the site. It's entitled, "Why the Past 10 Years of American Life Have Been Uniquely Stupid."
Yes.
So you want to launch into this for us, Adam?
Yeah. So the background on the story is he launches with the story of Babel, the biblical story of the tower, people who are technologically advanced, and they build this massive tower, but God curses them to make sure they can't communicate, because it becomes this metaphor for social media and what we've done, and how that miscommunication has imperiled groups and institutions and the future of our country. I think he talks about it as America, but this same problem is overseas. Many places have these exact same problems. It's not just here. Brazil has had it. Burma's had it. Russia has it right now. And so the idea is, how do we get to this point where people's idea of the truth are so completely divergent, and not just people left and right, but within the right and within the left, and what's happening to keep dialogue from happening and make us dumber. And he really hands it to Mark Zuckerberg, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he talks about the kind of inflection points along the timeline where this really tipped into being a real problem, where we went from this idea of social media being the great uniter and this modality that would facilitate unity and communication, into kind of the dystopic division that we're seeing, and the increasing acrimony between in-groups, I suppose, is a way of putting it. And I think what's, first of all, it takes like an hour to read this article. Like it's not a small thing. Like it requires you to really kind of like wrestle with it and grapple with it. It's incredibly well done.
Yeah.
He walks you through kind of like how social media evolved to the point where these algorithms, you know, are what they are, that are, you know, increasingly creating these information silos. But
pre-share, pre-retweet to post. Like it's really the share button and the retweet.
Exactly. And that's what brought the algorithm in to reward those, or to basically serve up what people like to retweet and share the most.
Yeah.
But in addition to the use of Babel, you know, as a metaphor or as an analogy, it's also a way of approaching this subject matter through the lens of James Madison and the Federalist Papers.
Yeah, that was cool.
As well as de Tocqueville, which I think is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to recollect my study of these individuals as, you know, as a young college student. But, you know, essentially like what Madison was saying, which is true today, is, you know, you just can't quite trust the masses. They get very emotional.
They're factionalized.
Which is kind of an anti-democratic idea, right? But what people often forget is that we don't live in a pure democracy. We live in a democratic republic. There are checks and balances on our purely democratic systems that favor kind of institutional stability. And this was the whole idea with Madison's perspective in the Federalist Papers. And Hauth makes the case that that idea, that warning that Madison was, you know, forecasting, we're seeing in reality getting played out in the democratic kind of forum of ideas that social media avails itself of.
Yeah. You know, the idea that Madison is saying that humans kind of tend towards factionalization and mutual animosity. And he kind of called this. And the Zuckerberg point of it is kind of like he paints Zuckerberg as this, obviously, no one's saying he's not a very, very smart guy. So he's this genius, but he's a very, very greedy, very, very naive genius who kind of bumbled his way into something that it has cost that he couldn't comprehend. I mean, he you know, like he was so taken with his invention and the amount of power and money he was going to make that he didn't think of any negative costs. And so this idea of lack of skepticism, which started there, has then been passed, I think. He doesn't actually say this, but I think the fact that the founders of these platforms lacked so much skepticism in what could go wrong, or just simply ignored it, that lack of skepticism has been passed down to us now. And so now you have people, because one of my favorite parts of the story is he basically breaks down most of the people who are so political on these platforms are a very small minority of people. They tend to be wealthy white people, and they're either far right or far left.
Right.
And one thing I notice when people who are super impassioned on social media platforms like to make points, almost always they're not skeptical of their own ideas.
Right. There's not a lot of self-awareness around that.
Hence the dumbing down.
On both sides.
Yeah.
So he talks about this hidden tribe study that was implemented by this pro-democracy group called More in Common, that surveyed 8,000 Americans in 2017 and 2018, and ultimately identified 7 groups that shared beliefs and behaviors. And there's the one furthest to the right that they call the devoted conservatives, which comprise 6% of the US population. And the one that's furthest to the left that they call the progressive activists comprise 8% of the population. So we're talking about 14% of the population that really monopolizes public discourse on social media, because they're the loudest and they're the ones that get the most retweets and shares, which creates this imperfect sense of what is actually transpiring in households.
Yes, they're the bulk of the shares, and
that they're both like white and rich on the polls, right? Yeah.
That's what.
And so we're being torn apart by a battle between two subsets of the elite,
right?
Even though we're shouting about, you know, the elites in the context of all of that.
And what's funny, it's like how I think last time we were on the air, I even mentioned this. It's like I said jokingly that, you know, if you're being ultra political, you're an asshole, and so we're being torn apart by assholes.
Right. So yeah, basically that's the TLDR of this whole thing, right?
Yes.
And yeah. So in other words, like, you know, conservatives, if you're within, you know, an aspect of one of those in groups on both sides, if you divert from that, let's say you divert from that conservative perspective, you're going to get accused of being a traitor.
A rhino.
And if you take a position at odds with the progressive side of it, you're not going to get called a traitor. You're going to get called a racist, a transphobe, or a Karen.
So on one side, it's the political candidates. If you're a rhino, you lose. You have no chance. But on the left, it is almost more insidious because it can really harm you in your daily life a lot more. And I think he's a little bit breathless and overdramatic about cancel culture. I do think it's a problem. I think we've talked about it. We've talked about this whole thing. I think it stems from academic theories that have leaked into our newspapers and even kind of. I think it's a problem. I do think that there's too much
basically
academic
the idea
thought
that
in our daily papers. Yeah.
Sorry, I was interrupting you again.
No.
The idea being that small percentage of people who are screaming about that thing finds its way into these institutions, into media and academia. And even though it's such a small percentage of people, they're able to hold those institutions hostage.
Right.
Because the social ramifications of the shouting that's going on about these issues, the consequences are too dire. So there's a retreat from really contending with the issues and a kind of silencing of ideas that results as a matter of course.
Right.
But you think that's overblown?
No, I think the way he frames it is a little overblown. I don't think, I think I think I have a quote here. The punishment that feels right for such crimes is not execution. It is public shaming and social death. I mean, I don't think every time something happens, it gets to that level, but I think there are examples of that level.
There's plenty of examples of professors losing their jobs, and journalists getting fired and the like. There's quite a bit of it, but it's more about like, okay, so maybe there's not hundreds of those, but there's enough of them. And what is the chilling effect of that?
That's right. No, 100%. You and I, almost every week, we talk about stuff we're not going to talk about.
Right. Well, let's kind of contextualize this article with the conversation we had on the last roll-on about Leah Thomas.
Yeah.
So we tried to have a balanced, nuanced conversation about a very difficult issue, and the challenge of trying to solve this problem of serving both fairness and inclusion. And I think we did as best as we could with a problem that has yet to have a solution. And I can tell you, just publicly, I was on the receiving end of a lot of vitriol from both women on the one hand and trans advocates on the other hand. So women were angry that I didn't take a harder core position, or you and I didn't take a harder core position on fairness. And trans advocates were very angry that we were even having this conversation without doing it in the presence of a trans person.
Right.
Basically making the argument that you shouldn't even be talking about this unless you have a trans person with you. So
which I completely
I have a hard time with that.
I reject it completely.
Well, if you're going to set up a condition that you can't talk about this issue unless you do A, B, and C, like most people are just going to say, well, I'm just not going to have the conversation, right? We have to be able to talk about these things. And yes, would that conversation have been more informed had we had a trans person who's familiar with this terrain with us? Probably. You could make the same argument if we had a coach of a college, women's team
or just a women's swimmer,
or whatever. You know what I mean? Of course, any kind of like experience-based perspective on either side of that would have better informed the conversation.
But to say you have to, that's the problem.
Right. But the point being that like publicly, I felt like it was hard. Like I'm not courting controversy. I tried to have that conversation. I felt like it was important. I think you and I agree on that.
Yeah.
Publicly, it felt like I'd failed everybody and, had done like a terrible job of even trying to do this. Privately, I got a lot of phone calls and text messages and DMs from people thanking us for having that conversation. And those messages came from both sides of the camp, from women athletes, women, trans people, trans advocates, trans parents, and the like. So, but that's one example of the difference between, what is truly kind of like the larger, quieter majority of people versus the very loud polarities.
Right. Well, we were speaking to that quiet majority, right? Which is what I think people like about the roll-on stuff, is because we tend to do that. I mean, we might get onto the progressive side more often than not, but often I don't think we're that kind of religiously progressive. And so we speak to this majority. And I think that's important. I think the majority needs to speak up more and support liberalism, which is free thought and free debate and free speech. And it's not, in order to talk about this issue, you have to have this in your background, or you have to, I mean, that's crazy. And it doesn't, I mean, yes, you should have you should be a serious person. You shouldn't be talking about bullshit you have no idea about.
Right.
But like, if you study up, you can have a discussion, and it doesn't matter your background. So I think that that's important. I also think that he talked about the fact that the left is the one that controls the majority of written media, entertainment, and all of this. So there is this broader impact of a quieter middle and a vocal left. And I thought about this when I watched, because I had my niece stayed with us and she wanted to watch the Grammys. I don't typically watch the Grammys. I've been like out of the mainstream music scene for a long time. Like, I like what I like, and I never pay attention to the Grammys since I'm like in high school. And but I really enjoyed it. And the difference between the Oscars and the Grammys is like, it's almost like film people seem to think that their job is education now, and the Grammy people know it's entertainment. And like, your job is to entertain. And so like, there's this different, like, people have a different perspective. That's why I have a problem with academic theory in journalism. It's like, yes, you can be in the op-ed section, but academic theories should not impact news reporting.
But everything is op-ed now. Right.
There's so much. Yeah. But that's kind of my take, is that like, people forget what their primary job is. It's a stay in your lane idea. We should focus on our primary job. If you're, yes, we need to have equal opportunity. We need to have more opportunity for more people who've been shut out of the system. But that doesn't mean that your job is in entertainment. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Back to the Substack issue, though, you're seeing this flight of journalists from these institutions that have been kind of degraded in terms of public trust. But what's interesting is that those Substacks tend to be pretty opinion centrist, like opinion first, right?
Right.
Like that it's some version of activism journalism for the most part in the most popular Substacks.
That's true.
And people who are distrustful of the old guard, the New York Times, whatever, seem to have the inability to lend that critical eye to the opinion-driven pieces of some of the big Substackers.
Well, sure. I mean, especially if you look at it on the left, because who invented opinion journalism? Rupert Murdoch. So you're basically playing by that playbook, and it's a bullshit playbook. And because what opinion journalism does is what a lot of people, I've seen it before, they overstate their argument. And when you overstate a winning argument, or any argument, but specifically a winning argument, you make yourself look like an idiot. And it doesn't actually help the cause. And so, like, we should all be more restrained. We should all be trending more to the middle. We should all be thinking, actually, you know what? I don't know enough. I don't know shit, really. Right. And that's what we were saying with the Leah Thomas stuff was, look, this is what it's at stake. We didn't make any judgments. We just kind of presented all the thought and feelings that were out there.
Yeah.
And did our best.
Well put.
Yeah.
Well put.
Anyway, but like the idea of, back to the Oscars and Grammys, the Grammys was fun. And the Oscars
performing. Yeah.
The Oscars didn't get fun until the very end.
The Oscars are, that got crazy.
Yeah.
It is a different vibe between
you know what I'm saying?
Things.
Like, Trevor Noah's up there having a great time. Everyone's having fun. It's like, it felt like a global thing. It felt like free. It felt like art. It felt like entertainment.
Well, it's also much more diverse in terms of the artists, from country music to hip hop and the like. Like, you're casting a much wider net in terms of the kind of people that are adorning the stage.
It felt like the silent majority's preferred entertainment system to the elite ivory tower weirdos.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of elite ivory tower weirdos, we had a whole category here of like cool stuff to share and content that we're enjoying, but we're at like an hour and 30 in.
Okay.
So maybe let's just save that for next
it.
time, because we did the Rollies already. So we had our diversion down entertainment alley that I think is plenty for this episode. And maybe we'll revisit that next time. So let's just we're going to go to this listener question, and then after that, we're going to go to a quick Zoom call with Chris Hauth.
Let's do it.
Sorry to interrupt the flow. We'll be right back with more awesome, but I want to snag a moment to talk to you about the importance of nutrition. The thing is, most people I know actually already know how to eat better and aspire to incorporate more whole plants, more fruits, vegetables, seeds, beans, and legumes into their daily routine. Sadly, however, without the kitchen tools and support, very few end up sticking with it. So, because adopting a plant-based diet transformed my life so profoundly, and because I want everybody to experience some version of what I've experienced, we decided to tackle and solve this very common problem. The solution we've devised, I'm proud to say, is the Plant Power Meal Planner, our affordable, all-in-one digital platform that sets you up for nutrition excellence by providing access to thousands of highly customizable, super delicious, and easy to prepare plant-based recipes. Everything integrates with automatic grocery delivery, and you get access to our amazing team of nutrition coaches 7 days a week and many other features. To learn more and to sign up, visit meals.richroll.com. And right now, for a limited time, we're offering $10 off an annual membership when you use the promo code RRHealth at checkout. This is life-changing stuff, people, for just $1.70 a week, literally the price of a cup of coffee. Again, that's meals.richroll.com, promo code RRHealth for $10 off an annual membership. All right, let's get back to the show. Just as a reminder, we entertain listener questions here. If you want your question considered for Adam and I to talk about on the show, leave us a voicemail at 424-235-4626.
That's 424-235-4626.
Do it now.
Our voicemail is standing by. All right, here we go. Jake from your old neck of the woods, Palo Alto.
Here we go.
Hi, Rich and Adam. My name is Jake. I'm calling from Palo Alto, California, where I just relocated 5 months ago. I left my hometown, Ventura, California, and dream job of 4 years in order to be closer to my wife's family, and in hopes for the betterment of our marriage and future of our 5-year-old son. I'm a vegan, 37-year-old primary care doctor and swim, bike, or run for about an hour every morning for my sanity. Last month, my larger-than-life younger brother, Steve, was tragically killed at the age of 34 by a rogue power line that hit him on the head while he was working on a ranch. 6 months ago, he married his high school sweetheart after a 16-year courtship that included world travels and great adventures. Steve regularly swam in his Speedo in the San Francisco Bay, even in the winter. He surfed big waves, snowboarded in the backcountry, went off of cliffs, and lived life to the fullest. He was on top of his game with ambitious goals, looking forward to starting a family, expanding his agricultural tech company, and was in the process of buying an avocado ranch in Carpinteria. 16 years ago, my older brother, Dave, died at the age of 24 after a heroic battle to leukemia. He was diagnosed with leukemia at age 6. I was 4 and Steve was just 1. He was cured at 10, re-diagnosed at 18, cured at 21. Re-diagnosed at 22 and had a bone marrow transplant, then suffered the last year of his life on a ventilator at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, not once giving up the fight. These catastrophic losses have been heartbreaking, and trying to make sense of them is emotional torture. My questions are, do you believe everything in life happens for a reason? And is there a point in trying to make sense of this incomprehensible life and world we live in, or does this just lead to despair? I respect you guys and appreciate all you do. The RRP has been an inspiration to me.
That's heavy, Jake. It's a pretty heavy one. My heart goes out to you. This is heavy stuff, real life stuff. And the questions that you were asking are philosophical and difficult to answer. So I'm not sure that I can come up with anything that's going to be fully satisfying to you. But I will say this. To your question of whether we believe or whether I believe everything happens for a reason. I mean, I can't say that everything happens for a reason in the universal sense of the word. Right?
100% no.
Yeah. And of course, I concede and recognize the difficulty and the pain that you've experienced trying to reckon with this and in this endeavor to kind of try to make sense of something so seemingly senseless and tragic. And so I think what I will say is that setting aside, like, is there a universal point to any of this, and focus on what I do know, which is that I think you can find solace and comfort in your own personal attempt to find personal meaning in these events, because these events, which are big, hard events, present you with a choice. On the one hand, you can either allow them to define you in a self-destructive way. The world sucks. Nothing's good. Bad things happen to me. But, I probably don't have to tell you that this mindset is not going to serve you well. Or on the other hand, you can try to find some spark in what has occurred to ignite you in a more positive direction. When I look at, or when I listen to you talk about your brother Steve being this incredible adventurer and how he lived life to the fullest, I can't help but think perhaps that was a choice that he made in response to your brother Dave and his early demise. Like looking at his life and realizing life's short, and I've been gifted this life, I'm going to make the most out of it. And celebrating the fact that he lived his life in that way, and that was a risky way to live. And if you're going to live your life on the edge, surfing big waves and doing the things that he did, like, this shit happens, and it doesn't mean that the world is a terrible place. I think he probably would say that he understood that there was a risk in living his life that way, but that was a choice that he made for himself.
It seems like the way it happened was such a tragic accident.
Yeah, I mean, it was like freak out.
That's not how he died. So it's like, I could see how that would be like, wait a second. And you do hear about that, like these great people who have these amazing lives and then they die doing something random, like falling off the second story by accident.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
But on that point of making this other choice, like, this can come in many forms. Like, you could channel that energy to raise awareness around leukemia, or perhaps share transparently how you're surviving this seemingly senseless passing of a loved one. In other words, like, can you take the unique experiences of your life, tragic, hard, and flip them to fuel a path and service to others? And I think we see this all the time. Like, parents of kids that are killed in school shootings become activists, or they start nonprofits to raise awareness around these issues that have affected them so deeply and personally. And I think that, heartbreak and despair, these emotions that you're experiencing are totally, they're totally natural human responses to what has occurred in your life. And I think you should feel all of that. But the challenge for you at some point after you've felt all of it is to process the events in a healthy way so that they don't fester and become, the foundation for a lot of unhealthy responses. So you got to find a way to make peace with yourself over what happened and transmute the events into something positive for other people. And I think when you direct that energy outward in service, that will provide you with a path that's lined with meaning, with purpose, with direction, with fulfillment. And it doesn't mean that you have to quit your job or that this even needs to be your primary focus, but devoting some part of your energy or your intention to that, first through therapy or some kind of modality to help you cope and process what has happened to you, which is an act of self-love. And then after that, through service, which is an act of love for other people.
That was so beautiful, Rich. I can't add anything to that other than to say you're a primary care physician as well. So you're already living a very cool life of, like, you're kind of leaning towards service already. I think it's when you have a broken heart, I think you can feel more what people have gone through. I think it allows you to be more empathetic. And I think that there's power in that. And not power like personal power, but power in your ability to reach others and to reach parts of yourself maybe that you didn't even know were there. And I just want to commend you for living a cool life already, and for sharing this in this way. And life is a beautiful gift, and so we can't forget that. No matter everything that happens, we have to remember that life is a beautiful gift. Whatever is happening out there, it's often tragic, but it is a gift. So we have to remember.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. Well, good. I think that's a good place to put a pin in it. We're going to turn our attention to a coaching call with Chris. But Adam, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate
I
you.
love you. And I'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
I love you too.
We'll
Where's my
again.
rollies? Let's go party.
I know. We gotta design. Maybe we should outsource the just put it out to the audience to come up with designs for the Rollie Trophy.
Yeah.
And
I
see
think
what
that's
we
a good
get.
idea. I'm going to go celebrate with fellow Rollie winner, Jason Camiolo.
Yeah. At the after party. Where's the after party? Yes, behind the velvet rope.
Yes,
right.
of course.
Very exclusive and elite.
If he lost, he might have slapped us.
It would have been rough. I'm so glad that the audience came through.
I'm glad too.
All right, dude. See you back here in 2 weeks. Like I said, I love you. Thank you, everybody, for taking this journey with me. And Roll On will be back in two
weeks, right?
from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Peace out. But I guess the first thing I would ask you is, what is the typical experience with the athletes that you're working with? Because I'm sure a lot of them, if not most of them, have had COVID at some point. So you have some data points on what's working, what's not working, people who try to get back into it too quickly, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think it's gone through every one of my athletes. I can't really think of anybody who hasn't besides myself. That's the crazy
you
thing.
Still haven't had it. Wow.
Not with 4 kids. That's even more surprising.
Right.
And we have to test also going to different households because it affects different households. So if somebody's feeling under the weather or something like that. So anyway, but that being said, your question is a legitimate one because it's across the board different for every athlete. But what I've found is really 2 camps. One, and this is the larger group, it takes longer than they thought to kick out of it. They have this general sense of malaise, of just not being 100%. They feel good enough to train. They feel good enough to do all the activities, but they're just missing a gear or 2. And they're surprised how long it takes. And then from one day to the next, the cloud lifts and they feel mostly back to normal. And so in those cases,
are you just asking people to train through it and deal with it? Or is it better to just take your foot off the gas completely or slightly?
Well, I think the first component there is you can train, or I let them train how they want to, but recognize that they might not be at 100% and not be so hard on themselves because of it. Right? We're constantly evaluating how we're progressing. And so it becomes this like, I'm not progressing, or I feel off, or I'm tired, or I'm flat, or I didn't eat enough, or something. And I say, it might still just be this carrying on for a longer period of time than you think. So allow yourself to not necessarily, once again, train without intention, but give yourself that little extra space of forgiveness, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm. But you don't think that the training itself is ill-advised or prolonging that recovery period?
I haven't seen it because those that I've given more time off to, or I've backed off the training completely, they're not necessarily getting healthier quicker.
Interesting.
And so there's those who 3-4 days later are basically back to normal, and then maybe another 2-3 days, and then they're 100%. But then there's others 3-4 weeks of just feeling just enough to notice that they're off, that they just can't perform, let's say, intervals or strength work or paces that they were before getting COVID. And so it's just a close watching process for the athlete and really providing the insight to me so that I can say, all right, you know what, we'll take out a few of these higher quality, higher intensity workouts and just stay true to the endurance or stay true to clean motions or just good strength work. Maybe we're not looking to top out the strength work, but just staying connected to so that once you are healthy, that you're ready to really hit that gear. And that's the fun. Right?
Yeah,
that
sure.
You as the athlete feel good about like, okay, as soon as that fog lifts, at least I'm ready and I can have some really good training days.
Well, I feel pretty fortunate in that, at least so far, I don't feel that malaise or that general fatigue. I I thought like I might have to take a couple of weeks off. Like I had athletes pinging me, friends of mine, and I know, because I know them and they're friends, I know that they, they're not afraid to train hard.
Yeah.
And a couple of them were like, I took 3 weeks off. Like I just needed that. But I felt pretty good pretty quickly. Like after 4 days, I felt pretty much fine. I was like, yeah, but I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to sit this out. And I think I took 7 days off total, but I felt ready to go and just very gradually and gently got back into the pool. I didn't push anything. Like I would go 3,000 or 4,000 yards, but I didn't really do anything very hard just to gauge it and see how I felt. But today you gave me a 4,700 yard workout and there were some hard efforts in there and I felt pretty good, and I got through it and that's the most yardage that I've done. And I know there's a lot of volume waiting for me, but I'm feeling pretty grateful that I'm not in that camp of feeling like I'm missing a step. Maybe that'll change, but right now that's kind of where I'm at. But I did miss 7 days on a pretty short time window. I'm now 8 weeks out of this swim. So there's a lot of work that has to happen. And obviously, not everything has gone perfectly to plan. And I've got a lot more hiccups, along the way over the course of the next 8 weeks, including this weekend where I'm going to be driving up north to your neck of the woods for an appointment for my back. And I'm going to miss a couple swim days in there as well because I'm doing the road trip with my kid and I don't want to be just training all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's pools up here too. I could help you.
I know. That's true. But like, I don't know. I'm like, hey, Jaya, go sit in the corner while I go train. Like I got to balance that. It's supposed to be kind of like a father-son road trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So with that being said, it's hard to know where you're at with regards to the health because you might have felt pretty good today because you also had a week lighter leading up to it to really absorb the training that you were doing prior and also increasing sort of the build as you were going. So it's hard to know that until we're a couple days further down the road here, at which point you're taking a couple of days off. So that's why we're taking the windows. And you're just a classic example of most any athlete that has a full-time job and has a family, right? Like it's stressful for all of us. And that's the whole challenge, how to navigate these little windows of when we can train and using the time we have to maximize the fitness gains. And so here we are, 8 weeks out to do 21,000 yards in one fell swoop.
Right. So what am I looking at here? How is this volume going to escalate? Because I'm always itching at this phase to be doing more, and you're always like pushing me to slow down a little bit. But I've worked with you long enough to know like those days are coming.
Yeah. Well, the beauty is we're starting the bigger prep this week with some longer sets. I'm hopeful that we can get in 2 key workouts this week, and they include some long continuous swimming. And you're going to curse me plenty then when you say I want to do more. And then I have 2 1800s straight for you waiting with 4 minutes rest.
Good.
And you're going to do that in the pool and be like, really? My brain is going mush back to our youth.
No, I love that stuff.
But the good thing is that with that, with our watches these days, we no longer have to count. Remember back in the day, if we had to swim longer, we didn't know if we missed a 50 or 100 or something. Now we can just look at our watch. So lucky on that. But that being said, it's a great opportunity to swim 3,600 yards broken and to do some fueling and hydrating halfway through to see how you're doing with that. And we want to get better at finding that all-day swim pace, right? Swim pace, excuse me. So that rhythm and that pacing that you can just turn the brain off and just keep swimming and getting familiar with that so that now we have a baseline for going along in order to do that just a bit faster and using that in our training in order to work around it. A few seconds faster than all-day swim pace, a few seconds slower than all-day swim pace so that we can start setting the intervals and the work around that.
Right. A couple questions. The first thing is, I got some good open water swims when I was in Miami, and I have a lifetime of open water experience. So I've never been uptight about making sure that I'm in the ocean doing workouts because I'm comfortable enough to know that like when I get there, it will be fine. But Do you think that it would be wise to start incorporating some long course workouts in? Because
Yes.
I'm swimming in a 25-yard pool, and I specifically go to this pool where they overheat it because it's more of like an older person therapy pool. But that's perfect for the environment that I'm going to do this swim in. It's going to be really hot. So I want to acclimate to the heat and the overheating. But I do think I would be well served by getting some long course workouts in, but I have to drive great distances, like either to Pasadena or way out to Simi Valley to get access to a 50-meter pool.
Yeah, so that will take some planning. And again, if we have to choose between getting to a 50-meter pool or getting in a longer workout in a 25-meter pool because you're using your training time to drive, I'd rather, right?
Right.
Because you're going to, and I say that we're both nodding our heads because I'm saying that because you already know, okay, what the benefits are of 50-meter, and you know how you'll feel getting into the open water and lengthening out your stroke and just finding that all-day pace. So if that means we spend 45 more minutes in the pool versus driving, and you get in another 4,000, that's sort of the equation that we need to play in these last 8 weeks, given that you have limited time every day anyway.
Right. I think that those moments, I could pick those moments though, where I do have more free time, like on a weekend or whatever. And you know, you and I both know that no matter how fit you are, short course, when you get into a long course pool and you throw down pretty hard, like you're going to be sore the next day. Like it is different in a meaningful way.
And depressing too, because you thought you were fit,
right.
And next thing you know, you're like out of breath on a couple hundreds.
Long course don't lie.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different, and it's a different swim sport. I mean, just knowing from being swimmers, we both know people who were world class at short course meters or even yards, NCAA swimmers, and then you put them in a 50-meter pool. They never even qualified for the Olympics, let alone up to their potential than the world fastest times they were doing in the NCAA swims. Right. So it's almost a different swim sport. So
right. So when you're looking at how much work I've done and how much work remains to be done, are we talking survival here? Like where
No.
Obviously I'm not going to be tip top, but I would like to be more fit than just trying to get through it.
For sure.
With also knowing like I'm not going to be able to hammer the way that I would prefer if I lived a different life.
Well, there's always that risk. We could just throw the dice out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's salt water. You'll float long enough. No, but you got to look at it this way, that you woke up today after a week sort of off and gently building your fitness back in and quickly in 3-4 days, or trying to. And you did a quarter of the distance basically this morning. So if we needed to push ourselves, could you have done a third or even up to half today and back off the pace substantially, but just continue to keep going? Probably. You'd be sore tomorrow or a little bit more fatigued, but you could. So that's where we're moving to next, where you do half the distance and you feel like you did today for a quarter of the distance.
Mm-hmm.
That's our next check-in point. Now, hopefully that happens in the next 2-3 weeks. So you have 5 weeks to go to sort of add that last little component. Are we going to do the full distance? Of course not. Are we going to do 3/4 of the distance? Most likely not, because we've missed that window. But will we go 12, 13,000 yards and you feel good about that? Yes.
Yeah, that seems totally doable. And if I can throw down 12, 13,000 and not be completely wrecked, that's enough confidence for me.
Exactly. That and fueling and hydrating during, or the combination in swimming, because you sort of fuel with hydration,
right?
That will sustain you in hour 3 and so forth, so that you feel good versus getting fatigued and you think it's fitness where it's actually running low on fuel. That combined with, as you're building the volume, I think you will have plenty of confidence going into 21,000 yards.
Yeah. The hydration and fueling piece is the next thing, because I haven't done any experimentation with that. I just go with water or nothing so far, because the workouts haven't been long enough to justify it. But starting to play around with that is something I'm eager to begin doing, especially in the higher temperature water where
Perfect. Yeah.
it's more meaningful. And what have you, obviously this is a very personal thing, but what have you determined in your experience and, all the open water marathon stuff that you've done that seems to be a good workable equation?
Yeah. So for me, it's first off in the warmer temperatures, it's hydration, right? Electrolyte hydration, so that at least that component I'm staying topped off with regards to hydration, because we dehydrate in warm water dramatically.
Yeah.
And it's hard to recognize until it's too late, until we're completely sort of dehydrated and it's affecting our performance. The second part is that you will have that opportunity this weekend, just before I forget that, to do two 1800s with 4 minutes rest. And so you can start laying out some different products, whether that's gels or chews. Personally, I like the chews. If I'm going to eat something solid, I can get through them pretty quickly, wash it down with water, and keep swimming. Anything more substantial, like a bar or anything like that, I'm still chewing hard and working in that rest, or even swimming one-handed backstroke while we're continuing to swim. And that's not ideal. So therefore, we have the chews, gels, or bottles with calories in them.
Right.
And there's plenty of those products out there that are really good, that have really advanced the technology over the last few years. There's a variety of products out there like Precision Fuel and Hydration. There is Martin's. So there are these bottles that have 200, 300 calories in them, a lot of electrolytes, plenty of sodium, and therefore you can also get your calories in for what we're looking to do. We're not going that big in a deficit for your 21,000. It's probably going to be around 5-6 hours. And so that's not going to be something too dramatic, that with a good breakfast, being topped off and staying on top of it with liquid fuel, you'll be pretty well versed in that by then.
Right on. With the added complexity of salt water.
Exactly. And so that's why you want cold, fresh water, so that you can rinse out your mouth, so that you can get rid of that hunger debilitating sensation in your mouth, that salty water. You don't want to eat anything or drink anything. You're just like,
right.
So therefore we want to be able to test that over the next few weeks.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll check back in 2 weeks. Yeah. Where would you like to see me then versus now?
Well, that's where we're going to start adding those longer swims. So in 2 weeks, you're going to have, might be even up to 6,000, 7,000, where you feel pretty comfortable. And you feel like, you know what? That wasn't so bad. Like I got out, went on with the rest of my day. Then we're starting to get good that we can quickly extend to 10,000 or 11,000. Because the beauty of 6 to 7 to 8,000, let's just say 65 to 8,000, 10,000, 11,000 is no difference. It's just more time in the water, but your arms and your body doesn't feel any different. And you're going to laugh, because it's really remarkable how you feel just as fatigued at 7,200 as you do at 9,800. You're just like, I spend more time in the water, but I'm not necessarily more tired. And that's our next sort of, threshold to cross.
All right. Sounds good, man. I appreciate all the sage counsel.
Of course.
I'm actually really enjoying this. It's nice to just kind of do one thing. I can't tell you the last time I just swam like pretty much every day and didn't have to worry about all the other stuff, because even during the most intense kind of Ultraman training, we were still only swimming like 2 or 3 days a week at most, right?
Yeah.
So you never got that day in, day out cycle of swim training that compounds much more quickly versus when you're wedging it into, the cycling and the running.
Isn't the psyche sort of so happy to be returning to this ritual? Isn't it bizarre?
It's like going back into the womb.
Yes. I kept telling Emily last year or 2 years ago, or last year when I was getting ready for the length of Tahoe, I was like, I miss this just being able to swim forever, or turn on the gears automatically, or just settling into a really smooth swim pace, the day in, day out. It just comes so naturally, and it feels so good for us who are so used to staring at a black line at the bottom of a pool.
And it is crazy for anybody who's watching or listening, because we have so robust a background. Like even at 55, like I know that I'm still tapping into what I started to build when I was 12, 14 years old.
Yeah. And it's just going back in the mind going, oh yeah, I remember this feeling that I can just click 200s and 300s over and over again. And there it is. It's fine.
Right. Cool, man. Well, always appreciate it.
Well,
And
glad to see you're healthy.
time.
Glad to see you're healthy. And you're starting to look like a swimmer again.
I know my hair's gotten fried.
Exactly.
You know, it's like I wore a cap when I had long hair, but I was like, my hair's short. I'm not wearing a cap. And now like my hair is completely fritzed out from the chlorine. But I'm kind of like, yeah, that's what you do when you're a swimmer. I'm just embracing it. You know what I mean?
It's just that we didn't have beards back then when we were swimmers.
Yeah. Let alone completely white beards.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, it's good to see you're healthy, and I'm glad you're back. And I will dive into your training as we speak.
Sounds good. Thanks, my friend.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Bye.